Welcome to The Infidel, podcast of the damned, the weekly companion show of the Infidel News. Join us as we discuss this week's religious accounts from an atheist perspective. From Timbuktu to Toledo, from Kathmandu to Canada, from Bangalore to Bangladesh. We deplore, you deride. And here are your hosts, Dave and Nicole.
Hello, and welcome to show number 17 of the Infidel podcast of the damned. I'm your host, J. David Core, atheist, author, and atypical archetype. And with me is my co-host, Nicole Samard. Hello, Nicole.
The one ever so humble.
Also joining us today is one of our anchors, Jenny McDermott. Welcome, Jenny.
Hi.
Today is Wednesday, February 5th, 2015, and we're going to be discussing the upcoming episodes of the Infidel News, which will run beginning today's not Wednesday. Today's Thursday, February 5th, 2015, and we're going to be discussing the upcoming episodes of the Infidel News, which will run beginning Monday, February 9th, 2015. Show notes for all of our podcasts can be found at the infidelpodcast.blogspot.com. I kind of butchered today's intro, but that's okay. Jenny's with us again this week for the second week in a row because we had a little bit of a scheduling problem. Our show was delayed from yesterday. We had a little scheduling problem with our guest, but Nicole, as usual, being the great producer that he is, made things all good and well.
I told you I'm great.
Yes.
And humble.
Yeah, thank you for that, Nicole. And before we go on to the first story, I wanted to tell a quick anecdote that's atheism related. I've told Nicole this anecdote, but it's not atheism related; it's skepticism related. I'll tell it real quick. It's kind of a funny anecdote. I live in Ohio, and last week we got a big snowstorm, and it started snowing early in the morning, and it quit around 6 o'clock, and then it stayed dead for a couple of hours, and then it started again about 10 o'clock. And a friend of mine is a photographer, and she wanted to go out into this wooded area that used to be a factory that's been all reclaimed by nature. And she wanted to go up in there and take pictures, but she didn't want to go up by herself. And she thought it would be pretty much like all the paths and everything would be pristine and just snow and trees and everything. So I went up with her, and it turned out that there had been somebody there in between the dead time. And so we're following their footprints. And she's walking in their footprints, and all of a sudden she's loping really long footprints. And she's going, "What kind of a person has this long a stride?" And she's going, "I'll bet this was not I'll bet this was Bigfoot," she says. And I said, "Yeah, okay, it's Bigfoot." So she gets down, and she gets to one of the footprints, and she digs it out, trying to find the impression where we're trying to dig out all the fresh snow to where it was compacted from where the footprint actually went in. And she's digging out the snow, and it had this huge arch on it, higher arch than any footprint should have. And it was like a man-sized footprint, really big, like a size 13 boot, if it was a boot. But we couldn't find any tread in it. All we could find was this huge arch. She's just going, "This is Bigfoot," she says. I said, "It's not Bigfoot." She goes, "You ever watch that Bigfoot show?" I said, "No, I don't watch it." She says, They say that Bigfoot calls other Bigfoot by pounding on a tree with a stick." She goes, "Get a stick and pound on the tree." And I said, "I'm not going to get a stick and pound on the tree." She goes, "Well, I think it's Bigfoot." 10 seconds later, we hear bang, bang. And she's like, "It's Bigfoot." She says, "We got to get out of here." So she runs. I got to follow after her to get out of there, right? So we're in the car, and she's going, "There's a Bigfoot. That's all everything shows it says it's Bigfoot." I said, "No, it doesn't prove that it's Bigfoot." She goes, "Well, how come the strides were so long?" I said, "I don't know. Maybe he was running." She says, "Well, why was there such a high arch?" I said, "Maybe he was wearing a big chunky boot, and there was just a lot of space between the heel and the." She said, "Why was there no tread?" I said, "It got snowed on. Maybe it melted a little bit and froze up." She's like, "Well, what was that banging on the tree?" I said, "I don't know. Maybe one of the nearby residents was trying to get the snow to fall off his barn or something like that." She says, "You have an excuse for everything." I said, "Yeah." Or the answer is it was Bigfoot. So it's that's I just thought that was like the perfect corollary between how you talk with Christians whenever anything has to be God. The argument from ignorance is always it was God because it can't be I can't figure out a better argument, so it must have been God. And it's the same exact kind of thing. So anyway, that was my anecdote. I just thought I'd share that. I thought it was kind of funny.
Oh, I wish you found out what it was.
Well, there's no way. That's. But
she needed to be safe. So somebody had to keep an eye on her.
Yeah, well, yeah, if I hadn't been there, she would have been just totally freaked out thinking she was running from a Bigfoot. So, anyway.
Maybe it was a dancer in go-go boots running away from some like adoring fan or something.
Yeah, maybe it was. Yeah, that or maybe there was an escaped gorilla from the zoo. You know, it didn't have to be Bigfoot. It could have still been some kind of wild animal. I don't know. It was just some guy was up there, probably hunting deer. He's not supposed to be in town, so he was probably running. But it could have been anything. Who knows? Who knows what it was? And maybe somebody overheard her saying it was Bigfoot and started banging on the tree because he was scared she was going to come close and catch him where he wasn't supposed to be. So who knows? But
there was like 4 monkeys that escaped the San Diego Zoo recently. That's like pretty nearby where I am. That's just so awesome. I'm like, I wish they like got free. Every time I hear about that, I'm like, come on.
Go monkeys, go. Yeah, I live a couple of about 100 miles from where there was a guy who had his own private zoo, and he found out he had cancer and he was going to die, so he released all of his animals and then killed himself in Zanesville. This was like 2 years ago, and there were wild tigers, bear, all kind of things roaming out in the woods, and they had to go. They were telling people to stay in their houses, and they had to go track down all these animals and kill them before they could let people. So the guy was trying to set his animals free, and he ended up getting them all killed.
That's terrible. It's so cold out there.
Well, it wasn't wintertime when he did it. It was like fall, but still, a lot of them
stayed out. Like if they stayed, they never got caught. Like they would freeze to death. Like maybe. Yeah. Maybe the lion.
Yeah, well, some of them would have been unable to survive. Others would have, but their only way they were going to survive was to kill people's dogs. They were like so it was. There was no good solution to it. I don't know what the guy was thinking. He was obviously not in his right mind. But if I found out I was dying from cancer, I might go all Walter White. Who knows?
Get into the meth business.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a bit of news, except that I can't remember the name of the conference. Remember 2-3 years ago there was the big conference in Washington?
Yeah, the Reason Rally.
The Reason Rally. It seems there's going to be another one in 2016.
Cool. I went to the Reason Rally. I loved it.
Oh, I loved it too. It was fantastic.
Yeah.
So... if there's another one in 2016, and it looks like it will happen, I'm going to be there.
It's going to be on the National Mall again?
I don't know that. But it looks like there's going to be a conference, so I'm going to be there.
I'll go with you.
You guys should go together and do a live
and cover it for ATV.
Yeah.
Yes. I'll film you guys. I've got all my equipment, and you can be reporters on the spot, and you can interview people. And
cool. Yeah, I ran into Aaron Raw at the Reason Rally, and I walked up to him and I just shook his hand and I said, "I just want to let you know I love your channel and you'll love mine." Damn it, man.
That's great. Didn't you meet him too, Nicole?
Yes, I did. I met a whole bunch of them. I met Thunderfoot. I met what's his? Just because I want to, the one who always ends with "pet the cat."
True Puka.
True Puka. I met him too. It was great.
Yeah, I went to there was a dinner afterwards, and I went to the dinner, and I sat at the same table as Hemet Mehta and Greta Christina, and but the one person that was there. This is my funny story from the dinner. Do you remember Prof MTH?
Yeah.
Okay, he was there, and I walked up to him and I said, I just want to let you know I enjoy your videos. As Woody Allen said, especially the early funny ones.
Anyway, shall we start?
Yeah, let's do the first story.
In preparation for the visit by Pope Francis to Manila, an uncomfortably familiar spectacle took place as the government officials attempted to put a nice face on areas Pope Francis will most likely be and see. Attention is being drawn by human rights groups to the fact that hundreds of impoverished beggar children were rounded up and detained, at least while the Pope was in the country. This is in addition to those adults who might have been likely to spoil the visit in other ways through street crime and other forms of obstruction. The symbolism is not lost on anyone who knows of the man born Jorge Mario Bergoglio's background as a priest, archbishop, and cardinal in Argentina, who often took public transportation rather than limousines and had a special concern for the poor. In a country whose population is almost 90% Catholic, appearances take precedence over reality, however, and the city didn't want to take any chances with creating a bad press event. Meanwhile, some claim the city routinely rounds up as many as 20,000 children a year just to keep them off the streets, so perhaps the papal visit was just an opportunity for activists to draw attention to the practice.
Yeah, the Philippines is a strange place. As far, there's one island. Remember last week where Fox News was saying that in England they have no-go zones because the Muslims took over England. Well, they actually do have places like that in the Philippines, where the Muslims control the area, and Christians are afraid to go because they'll get kidnapped and held for ransom. So the Philippines is just riddled with graft. Like if you send something to somebody in the Philippines, they sometimes have to pay a bribe to get their stuff from the postmaster. It's that bad. So it's not surprising that the Philippines. There's the Pope. I'm sure I really don't think that the church ordered them to get rid of the beggars. I think this is something that the government did on their own for to save face for themselves. Had nothing to do.
Obviously, yeah. And I'm glad we've got this story this week because it shows why we pick certain stories, or I pick certain stories to cover, because in this case, a lot of people saw on the news, the Pope visiting the Philippines and everybody being excited, and it all looked nice and pretty. But nobody talked about the children who were being arrested and jailed because they're homeless. 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds who were put in jail because they're homeless. And nobody talked about it except for us. Right. We're the ones who talked about it. So, okay, we're a bit late in our news, but at least, we do cover things that others do not. We bring up, facts, that are not covered really by the big media.
Yeah. The a lot of the kids were probably happy to be off the streets for the day, though, because they probably got a warm meal. But yeah, I mean, it's atrocious too that they have that many people having to live on the streets in a country where there's no need for it to be like that. There are part of that is because the United States uses the Philippines for cheap labor. They're one of the countries that we use for not just the United States, but first world countries use second world countries like that to keep their prices down, to keep their costs down, rather than and so the people end up staying impoverished, and the government people end up making all the money. So people join the police force and the army just to get out of poverty.
Well, I think that's interesting, though, that the Pope did say while he was over there, you don't have to breed like a rabbit to be a good Catholic.
Yeah. Yeah. That's not. Yeah.
So he did not say, condoms are a good thing, but he did say, stop breeding like rabbits, you fools, in a gentle kind of papal way. Yeah,
but the Catholic answer to that is use the rhythm method. It's not,
Yeah.
It's not get a vasectomy. It's not tie your tubes. It's not use a condom. It's pull out quicker.
Yep.
Supposedly that's like 89% effective, though. The pull out method.
Oh yeah, it's 89% effective. I don't think it's not as effective as a condom.
100%.
Shall we go on to the next story?
Let's do her.
With the unimposing title of Stand with the Prophet Against Terror and Hate, A fundraiser, education, and awareness seminar in Richardson, a small community near Garland, Texas, has brought out the haters. Shouting through a bullhorn such thing as "time to repent" and "Islam is filled with murder, this is your wake-up call," and "how many of you Muslims are terrorists," Reuben Israel, the street preacher from Los Angeles, gathered with about a dozen other Christian protesters outside ISD's Caldwell Center. Other reports indicate that several hundred other protesters from groups such as Jihad Watch were also gathered in protest. That group's director, Robert Spencer, said of the Muslims, "They have too long controlled the discourse and shut down any honest examination of motives and goals of terrorists by crying Islamophobia." The FBI has also been alerted to several threats of violence received through social media. The event was organized by the Islamic Multimedia Foundation Sound Vision, which is headquartered in Chicago. Alia Salem, with the North Texas chapter of CARE, the Council on American Islamic Relations, said that 500 participants attended the event to raise money for their program to educate others about Islam and Muslims for the purpose of combating Islamophobia, terrorism, and hate.
Yeah, so what we have there is an organization of Muslims who gathered to try to defeat terrorism, and a group of Christians gathered to call them terrorists and scare the community into thinking that they were raising money to send to terrorist organizations. So you can't win with these Christians. You can't, no matter. You just can't.
I know. And the thing is, I chose to illustrate this story with the president of Jihad Watch. So, it's a bunch of right-wing nuts.
Is Jihad Watch is under Pamela Geller, isn't it?
I think, they're all involved. Mm-hmm. All the worst ones are involved in there. I'm not sure if it's under Pamela Geller, but...
Okay.
I really like that this whole rally kind of... it's so much similar to the argument on YouTube that you see everywhere. It's like, well, we have to be careful that we're not being Islamophobes, but then the other side is like, no, we have to, discuss this. And it's just like where you see everywhere any video about Muslims right now or terrorism, or even with the Charlie Hebdo situation, it's like constantly a back and forth with that. Well, are we like confusing some of these people with terrorists, or
Yeah. Well, if every Muslim was a terrorist, we'd be dead. They'd just win. It would be over, because all they have to do is strap a bomb to themselves and kill 10 people. Just to go someplace where there's 10 people, and every one of them could do that, and everybody would be dead if they were all terrorists, and it'd be over in a minute. But they're not all terrorists. So it's just such a fallacious idea. And there's nothing. I've read the Quran, and it can be interpreted as telling Muslims to go out and be jihadis, and it can be interpreted that it's only talking about within certain situations, and then you can also interpret it to mean that it's all about within your own self. So it depends on how anything's open to interpretation that way. So the idea that the book itself, when Sam Harris called it the motherlode of bad ideas, it is a motherlode of bad ideas. Though nothing about it is a good idea, but it's not a motherlode of bad ideas in the sense that it's automatically, if you read it and believe it, you are going to be a danger to other people. There's no truth to that.
Right.
Absolutely.
And then there's those who believe in Sharia law and those who don't follow it,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Sharia law also, that's another thing where people get confused about Sharia law. Sharia law is no different than, in an analogous way, it's no different than the Old Testament Deuteronomy. Deuteronomy is biblical Sharia law. It's rule after rule after rule, and Leviticus is rule after rule after rule for how to deal with theft, infidelity, all these different rules on how to deal with it are in the book, and that's what Sharia law is. But except that it's not actually Quranic. It's more. I don't even, is it in the Hadith, or is it just something that they've come up with over time?
Not sure.
Yeah,
I'm not an expert.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter. It's in the United States, you can't have Sharia law, just like you can't have. We never have to worry that an eye for an eye is going to be the law of the land in the United States just because it's in the Bible, because we have the Constitution. And the same thing for Sharia law, and the same thing for these little subgroups that they allow, that like the Amish. The Amish have their own rules for how they deal with things within the Amish community, but they're still subject to state law and federal law. Just because they have their own rules doesn't mean that they can supersede anybody else's rules.
Well, that's what gets to me is also people who say that every Muslim should be apologizing for every time a terrorist does something.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me, but no. When the mafia does something wrong, every Catholic in the world does not apologize for the mafia.
No.
And when the IRA was bombing people and killing, fighting their own war, every Catholic in the world did not apologize for what the IRA was doing.
Mm-hmm.
Why should we expect every Muslim to apologize for all the bad that's being done in the name of Islam by people who are terrorists?
Right. Well, it's just like this week, ISIS burned a Jordanian who was a Muslim. They burned him alive, and Jordan responded by executing an Iraqi suicide woman that was in ISIS. But the thing about that is ISIS, that's like killing their dog to them. They don't care. But then, did you hear this? Yesterday, they found the executioner of one of the ISIS groups. ISIS executed their own executioner, and left his head with a note on it. I don't know what the note said, but they left his head with a note, and there was a cigarette nearby. So they think they caught him smoking. So they executed him. So they'll execute anybody. They're not discriminatory that way.
Maybe that's how they have no smoking signs with ISIS.
Yeah.
To just like leave a head and a lit cigarette.
Yeah.
2 years ago, the Infidel brought you the story of Tanzania's black market trade in albino body parts. In that report, we told you that the UN speculated that upwards of 72 albino persons had been killed in the African country since the turn of the century, although only 5 such crimes have been prosecuted successfully. Since that report, the number of albino victims has continued to expand. It is now so prevalent that in the last 3 years alone, over 70 new victims have been accounted for. Most recently, a 4-year-old albino girl was kidnapped and ritually slaughtered by a group of armed men in the northern Mwanza district. The killings result from claims by witch doctors that albino flesh has medicinal qualities. Finally, the Tanzanian government has responded with an official ban of witch doctors, although many believe this effort will do nothing to curtail the trade and slaughter. Others worry that the ban will adversely affect herbalists and other traditional healers who are not involved in the killings. Father Pyrrhus Rudachura, Vice Chancellor at the Catholic University of East Africa in Kenya, said, "We need to research and understand why witch doctors prefer albino body parts and why many people believe them."
That is just a bizarre story. I don't understand so many things about that story. Mainly, why the response of the government is to ban witch doctors. That obviously doesn't do anything, because that's like the war on drugs. It doesn't do anything except for create criminals out of the users. You got to get the people who are going after these albinos in the first place, and just prosecute them, arrest them and prosecute them, find them, arrest them, prosecute them. It can't be that hard. There's only so many albinos. How hard can it be to catch somebody coming after albinos? You just watch the albinos.
Well, I don't know. It's how to say it without not being, and remain politically correct, but the thing is, remember when we had that, we were discussing a few weeks ago, the ministers who go over in Africa, and then they start telling people, that homosexuals are horrible and they are terrible and they do horrible things, and then after that they're surprised when the laws are put in place, that make homosexuality not only illegal, but a death, crime.
Yeah.
And now, we got something kind of similar. It's not somebody from the Western world who goes and tells them it's something wrong, but it's just something that some people do. And how can we be surprised that, when they come up with horrible laws against homosexuals?
Yeah. See, I think what we should do is we should start a rumor that witch doctor testicles cure impotence. And then everybody will go after the witch doctors.
Yeah.
Because there isn't a way they could just educate these people, like the same with the other witch doctors that we were talking about a week ago, that psychologists were coming to help them basically like trick people using their spiritual medicine into like be able to diagnose people from suffering from psychological problems and then fix it. But it's like, why don't you actually just like have them become a psychologist, or like be honest about it, or actually educate these people in some way? I mean, I know why we don't, because money and all that. But
yeah. Well, this whole situation too, where witch doctors are telling people that albino flesh cures blah blah blah, is very similar to the rhino horn thing, where in China, it's China and a couple of other places too. It's folklore that a rhino horn cures impotence. So people go out and slaughter rhinos just to get their horns, and it puts them on the endangered species list. So as hard as it is to convince people not to believe that, it's the same kind of difficulty, except that they've stepped it up. And it can be like a remember that poem about the Nazis where it's I said they came after the Jews and I said nothing, and then they came after the homosexuals and I said nothing, and then they came after me. Yeah, the witch doctors can, whatever your situation is, whatever the witch doctors can convince somebody to go after you. So.
Well, I think the problem is it's so complicated, the situation over there, that it's too easy to oversimplify and too tempting to oversimplify. So that's why I hesitated to make that comment earlier, because it is an oversimplification of a very complicated problem. When you were talking about the rhino horns, well, same thing happened with the tigers, the Indian tigers. It's they're believed to be extremely good for to have some kind of magical power, and that's why they were being hunted so like crazy for a long time. They were on the brink of extinction as well.
Yeah, it's people are just. And that's why when like I have friends who practice Reiki.
Oh yeah.
And other things like that, and they it's harmless. No, that kind of thinking is the same kind of thinking that has people killing albinos. It's the exact same kind of thinking. You're just believing some bullshit, and for another thing, it is actually harmful, because if you're practicing Reiki instead of using medicine, you're putting yourself at risk. If you believe in Reiki and your kid needs help, you might use Reiki instead of actually getting them help. It's like these anti-vaxxers. We're all going to die from measles because Jenny McCarthy doesn't want her kid to get autism. It's ridiculous. Which, by the way, speaking of that, yesterday Jenny McCarthy opened up Twitter to a hashtag Ask Jenny. and it went crazy with people asking her stuff about that. And so I asked her. I said, my tweet was, why do you believe one scientific study that says vaccines cause autism, but you don't believe the dozens of others that say that don't? Because that's the disconnect that you're dealing with the anti-vaxxers. Is there's one study that's been discredited that said that it caused autism, and there's been 100 that says it doesn't, but they're going by the one.
Actually, there's been this thing where this study where I can't remember. I should have written it down because it was interesting. That linked people who think like that with conspiracy theorists.
Mm-hmm.
That basically deep down there is in those people, this conspiracy theory thinking behind them. They may not be as crazy as others, but there is some conspiracy theory behind all that.
Well, if you listen to them, they always bring up big pharma, it's it's all it is they want to make money on vaccines. It's the same thing with climate deniers. They these all it is scientists trying to keep themselves in business. If they were doing a study. And the study says climate change is not being caused by human use. They'll make more money than by saying that it will. Really, because they'll get money from the oil companies because that backs up that supports them. Whereas saying that it does cause that human activity does cause global warming, who's going to pay you for that? Who's going to pay you to say that? Who benefits from that? Nobody. It just makes no sense.
No, none whatsoever.
Say that I feel bad for Jenny McCarthy too, because it's like, with her fame, people end up, talking her up on it. Like, oh yeah, you're totally right, because you're like this hot famous girl. Mm-hmm. And then she just never knew. And plus, like in school, one of my first English classes in college, the teacher was super awesome, super intelligent guy. It was more sort of like a political science class in the end, but he kind of would mention some stuff, and I was like, what is this dude talking about? Like, he'd be like, what about the pyramid on the money, guys? And I'd be like, what? And then he made us all write papers, and he'd be like, okay, what do you think is the biggest thing that it influences the world? And I'd be like, I don't know, I made something up about corporations. He's like, but don't you think you mean Monsanto?
Yeah.
And I'd be like, no, do I? And he'd be like, I think you want to write about Monsanto and GMOs. I think you want to write about that and the cancer. And I'd be like, really, I don't. And then one day he called me out in class. He was like, are there any atheists in here? And I was like, me. And then one other girl was like, me. And he's like, oh, that Richard Dawkins. And he didn't explain it. And I was like, are you an atheist? And he was like, well, I don't like labels. But, I mean, I don't know. Kind of went on a tangent there. But conspiracy theorist, hates Richard Dawkins, wants labeled food, hates labels, I guess.
Yeah.
And the thing is, a lot of them, because they've got this conspiracy theory thing going through their mind, they think that makes them critical, as in, they have to, they have a critical look into everything in the world. They have a critical eye. They are skeptics. They're not skeptics, they're conspiracy theorists.
Yeah.
Well, it's difficult too, because like one of the first movies I watched that kind of like, along with Religious, that kind of got me into coming out about being an atheist was this movie called the Zeitgeist or Zeitgeist Movement or something.
Yeah, I know.
And you're watching and we're like, oh my God, like the first thing they go into is 9/11 truthing. And we were like, totally believed it, because they also went into this whole spiel about religion. And it was really believable, but we both kind of kept asking each other, like, is this cited? Like, is this, there has to be like studies or something, but they don't mention it throughout the movie.
Yeah.
And
there's a big thing in that movie about comparing Jesus to Mithras to Apollo. Do you remember that part?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's all inaccurate.
Yeah, I found that out later too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm having a drink too.
Yay! Mine's apple soda.
Mine's whiskey.
Mine's Pepsi. It rhymes.
Pepsi, whiskey, and apple soasty. But I got into an argument today on Facebook with not an argument. I'm not gonna. It wasn't an argument. It was a schooling. This guy posted a picture from some thing about fluoride. Did you know there's a conspiracy theory about fluoride? They think that it's
Which one?
Fluoride in the water.
But
theory,
which conspiracy theory?
There are several, but the one it was about brain control. Right.
Okay.
They put fluoride in the toothpaste. They put fluoride in the water in order to control your brain. And I pointed out to him two simple things. One, fluoride in the water is voluntary on a community by community basis, and there are communities that don't, and there are communities that do. And there's no evidence. There's no valid scientific research that shows that people in the one group are in any way more pro-government, anti-government, anything than the other group. So, that still falls apart there. The second place, the people who run the governments in those cities live in those cities, and they bathe in that water, and they drink that water, and they cook with that water. So, and their families drink that water and cook with that water. So if you were going to, it's like the same with the chemtrails. If you were going to put brain-altering things in the air, it would affect you. So you wouldn't do it.
Well, they take something that has a bit of an inkling of truth, and then after that, they just turn it around into something totally different. They just blow it out of proportion.
Right. Well, fluoride is fluorine, and fluorine is toxic in large doses. But so is iodine. But that doesn't mean that you're going to take it out of the salt because everybody will get goiters. So there's benefits to things, and there's drawbacks. Anything too much chocolate makes you fat, but that doesn't mean that you outlaw chocolate. It's ridiculous.
Or they're saying that alcohol is poison. Sorry, but even water can be poison if you drink too much.
Yeah, you can drown yourself.
Exactly.
By drinking water, yeah.
So and then I saw one this week. It was about the grain of truth was, I don't know if you're familiar with there was a scientist who in the late 70s started studying stress, the influence of stress on health. He discovered that the thing about ulcers and stress, that's garbage, but that your immune system will react differently if you're a stress person. And he did that by watching apes, studying apes in Africa. So in around 2010 or 2012, he said, that there was some link to some chemicals in the brain, and therefore some kind of medication could help people, relieve from stress. And somehow it got turned into the idea of a vaccine against stress. Mm-hmm. So now with that bit of truth, they have, conspiracy theorists have come up with the idea that they can change people's thinking and can turn them into robots with the right vaccine.
Mm-hmm.
So vaccines to turn people into robots. Is that crazy? Nah. There's no way. That's not crazy. That's true.
Yeah. It's the idea of have you read Holy Blood, Holy Grail?
No.
It's an excellent book, but it's crazy. But it's a really fun read. But it's these guys that you know what Rosslyn Chapel is, right? Rosslyn Chapel is a chapel in Scotland, in a city called Rosslyn, that the Da Vinci Code uses.
Yes, I was. That's what I thought, but I didn't want to.
Yeah. Well, Dan Brown got the idea because he read Holy Blood, Holy Grail, And they talk about this idea that the Virgin Mary had a daughter, Sarah, and she went to Egypt, and that there's a bloodline that you can follow from there. Well, here's this, every white person, and a lot of black people because of intermarriage too. If you're half white, it relates to you too. But every single white person in the world can trace their lineage back to Charlemagne. I don't know if you knew that or not. It's true. That's an actual fact.
Oh,
right?
yeah?
Yeah. Because, well, here's why. If you figure you have, if you're white, you have 2 European parents, that originated somewhere down the line in Europe, 4 grandparents, 8 great-grandparents, 16 great-great-grandparents, 32, 64, 128. By the time you get like 15 generations back, it's more than the population of Europe at the time of Charlemagne. So there's no way that everybody can't trace their lineage back to Charlemagne, right? But in Holy Blood, Holy Grail, they point out that every United States president can trace his lineage back to Charlemagne, as if that's a significant point. So that's like you were saying, you take these like little pieces of fact, and it's a truth, but it doesn't matter. Because it's what you're leaving out that matters.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I've traced back my my ancestry something like 12 or 16 generations, so a long way. Mm-hmm. It's a lot of work. Shall we go on to the next story?
Is there
this one? It won't be a part of the show of the Infidel. It's going to be an exclusive for us. It involves the Vatican.
Yes.
So here we go.
At the Pontifical Council for Culture in the Vatican, they have taken inspiration from Pope Francis' openness and are reflecting on women's cultures and the place for women in societies today between equality and difference. At what point are we today as women? I am sure you've asked yourself many times who you are, what you do, what you think about your being a woman, your strengths, your difficulties, your body, and your spiritual life. If you want to, you can share your vision. Why not tell it with a 1-minute film or in a photo? Put your work online with the hashtag #LifeOfWomen and send a link to lifeofwomen2015@gmail.com. It could be chosen to be part of the opening event of a great meeting of cardinals and bishops in Rome in February 2015 and as part of a crowdsourced film on YouTube. You have until 4 January to send in your materials. You, yes you, are important. Merry Christmas!
This video caused quite a bit of problems for the Vatican when they came out with this video. For one thing, it's just terrible production values. But the idea behind it was so diminishing, really. I mean, it's just the liberals in the Catholic among Catholic women grabbed onto the idea of making a video of themselves and sending it into the Vatican to basically they politicized it, and Vatican pulled the video down because it was not working out in their favor. And this is another one of those situations where you're so tin-eared that you put out a video promoting an idea that you know that internet savvy people are going to find and use against you. And it happens all the time. The Republicans do it all the time. They put out these things, and then somebody finds it. Like I was saying with the Jenny McCarthy thing, you know, how tenured is she that she thinks putting out Ask Jenny isn't going to get her just a shit ton of backlash. Yeah. It's that same kind of thing with the Vatican putting this video up. They were so stupid.
And the thing is, it's taking place right now. Their meeting of cardinals to discuss the future of women or the involvement of women in the church. Mm-hmm. It started on Tuesday, I believe. Now, if you're lucky enough to live in Italy, you can even watch it on TV. Don't you wish you were in Italy and watching that thing, Jenny?
Yes.
Jenny says yes. Nothing like watching a bunch of old men talk about women's problems. It's like the Republicans in Congress. They put all men on the women's committees and stuff.
Oh, you just brought back a horrible memory.
Well, they do, though. That's true.
Yeah, but when you were talking about the Republicans, you heard about the latest one about rape?
No, what they do now?
It's a Republican who said that, doubted that it was really rape if you have sex with a woman who's drunk, if she's your wife.
Oh, yeah.
If she's your wife, you can have sex with her while she's totally drunk, passed out, etc. You know, it's not rape.
Yeah.
I feel like your wife is the last person who's going to want to have sex with you.
Whether she's drunk or not.
This is, yeah. So you're talking about me there, right?
Not you. The royal.
Yeah. You were talking about me. I'm offended. That's it. That's your last show.
You can ask her.
Yeah, next time she walks by. Yeah. Okay. Well, I just thought that was a funny one. Anyway, let's go ahead and do the Christian glitches.
Okay, we've got Christian glitches today, and it's quite the winner.
We're going to ask the world to unite with us. Because if we don't stop these flesh-sucking sodomites who are demon-possessed, they are evil spirits that died many years ago, now taking over the lives and bodies of others, and they love to suck flesh. They love to suck body fluids. What they haven't told you, and what God Almighty has given me the revelation thereof, is that soon, after the court announces that they are to be protected by the Constitution to be sodomites, they're going to also start cannibalism. Every sodomite, every lesbo, every homo, every fag, every transvestite, every LBGT person, by the year 2016, will have participated in some sort of cannibalism because they're demon possessed. And they will do it with a smile on their faces. In fact, they will be scurrying through and rummaging through the hospital medical waste, looking for human waste. That is the depravity at which sodomites are under conviction by the demons that possess them. So you're going to have to hide the flesh. A number of people are going to go missing, and only their bones will show up. Now, I know this sounds a lot like hyperbole to you.
Nah, it's not hyperbole. It's folly.
Yeah.
That guy, you know, God has revealed it to him thereof.
Yeah. Well, the idea that, what did he say? The Constitution, when the courts declare that they have the right to sodomize in the Constitution,
something like that.
That doesn't even make any sense. That's not even a thing.
Well, the guy is a complete moron. He is a perfect example of the word ignoramus. You look in the dictionary for ignoramus and you find his picture. Yeah. It's that bad. It's the old joke, but it's him.
Yeah. I wonder, he's one of those situations where you got to wonder, if any of it is Poe. And any of it, you know, I mean, I'm sure some of it's not, but once he starts like building a following, saying these ridiculous things, if he doesn't just try to think of more and more ridiculous things to say, because he has to top himself, because he's the one that did the Starbucks sodomite semen in the latte thing a couple of months ago.
And the thing is, he was interviewed by Cenk from.
Young Turks. Yeah,
the Young Turks on that topic. Mm-hmm. And he very much agreed that it was true, and he held his grounds, you know, that is all true.
Well, I don't know. It's just bizarre. The guy's a flake. I mean, and that anybody believes anything he says, though, is what's weird, because he's not even basing it on the Bible. He's just basing it on God told him this.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And actually, he's got a lot of followers. Like, if you look at where, remember I talked the other week about Lone Star 1776, the guy who is helping Kent Hovind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He's a huge follower of Pastor Manning, because that's who it was, by the way. His name is Pastor Manning.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. There. Speaking of dangerous people with followings, Pat Robertson came out on the 3rd as an anti-vaxxer.
Yep.
Yeah. So there's that. That doesn't help anything.
Oh yeah, and he also repeated the same bullshit about the no-go zones in Europe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, idiocy is everywhere in the world.
Yeah. Yep. And it's always a conflict between the libertarian idea of people should be allowed to do what they want to do, and the totalitarian idea that the government has a responsibility to protect people from themselves, in a sense, you know, from each other. At any rate. So these anti-vaxxers are really putting other people at risk. And as much as you want to be a libertarian, the common sense in you says, please, government, step in and stop these people. You know.
The best line I heard regarding the anti-vaxxers was a couple of weeks ago, when somebody came up with the line that if my child cannot go to school and bring peanut butter with him, then your child cannot go to school bringing his disease with him.
Yeah. That's they did a thing yesterday on the Daily Show. Did you watch the Daily Show last night? Anybody? Either of you?
No.
There was a one of the new members of Congress was doing a speech, and he said that he's very anti-government. He's a small government teabagger. And somebody said to him, well, don't you want the person who delivers your coffee to you at Starbucks to have washed their hands after they went to the bathroom? And he said, did you hear about this? And
yes.
he said, I don't care if Starbucks decides they want to change the policy that you don't have to wash your hands, as long as they put up a sign that says well, that's just changing the sign.
You know, just change the sign that says, you know, our employees do not wash their hands before taking care of your food.
He still wants the same amount. He still wants the exact same amount of government control, and doesn't realize that he wants the same amount of government control. He thinks he's being like libertarian with it, but he's just changing the sign.
Yep. He's, you know, like, this lunacy is incredible. It makes, you know, the brain hurt.
Yeah. Well, anyway, that's our hour, so we'll wrap it up. Jenny, do you want to? Do you have anything you want to comment on about what's going on with you at all? No, I don't mean. You know,
really,
no, I mean
anything.
I
put out a video about it today, about some issues with some other YouTubers that I've been having, and maybe kind of clear the air a little bit. And then I'm going to put out a video about Anita Sarkeesian because she is being voted Humanitarian of the Year by Harvard for 2014.
Awesome.
So, yeah. So I'm going to make a video about that.
Cool.
Good.
All right. Nicole, do you have anything coming up soon?
Christian glitches.
Okay. All righty. I'll be watching for it because I've been waiting. Okay, well, that's all for today. Please make sure that you subscribe to the Atheism TV channel. There you can watch the Infidel News for the Damned, where our talented team of writers and anchors present these and other stories not normally covered in the media. In the coming week, the Infidel will rerun today's stories and many more fascinating ones. You'll find Atheism TV at youtube.com/atheismtv. The Infidel Podcast of the Damned is a Nicole SD production. Nicole and I would like to recognize and say thank you to True Search, who did the voiceover used in our intro and gave us permission to use music from his song Lied To as our opening theme. We'd also like to thank Jenny for participating in today's podcast. Thank you again, Jenny. Thanks for coming in at the last minute. Nicole's channel is Nicole SD and can be found at youtube.com/NICOLSD. I'm Gamut Man on YouTube, at Gamut Man on Twitter, and my blog and information on my books, including my nonfiction title, Believe It, You Know an Atheist, as well as my mystery novels featuring the atheist detective Lupa Schwartz, can be accessed at tinyurl.com/lupalanding. While there, you can sign up to receive my newsletter. Signing up also entitles you to choose one free ebook from my collection of 99-cent novellas. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.